Welcome to the Apartment Investor Show, where we help you get smart and invest smarter in multifamily real estate. I'm your host, JC Castillo, founder and managing principal of the Multifamily Property Group. And joining me as always is my good buddy, my co-host, my co-pilot, Mr. Paul Peebles, national underwriter for Old Capital Lending. Paulie, you look like you might be somewhere else than your normal sort of get-up.
Not in Dallas today, JC. I am in beautiful Kauai, enjoying a little summer vacation with the family, but I wanted to spend some time with one of our friends, and I'm glad we were able to put this together. So again, Paul Peebles with Old Capital Lending, and let's turn it over to JC.
Well, Paulie, today what I figured we would talk about is we're going to talk about, for all you buyers out there, all you people that want to buy multifamily properties, we're going to talk today about how you can get more looks and buy more deals with a multifamily broker. And, I think what's really important here, guys, is that if you really think about it, brokers have a pretty hard job. And we've got one on the line with us today that you're going to meet and talk to. But brokers have a hard job in the sense that they've got, multiple deals that they're juggling at any one time, maybe 5 deals at one time. And they've got another 6 deals that they're underwriting and giving brokers opinions of value. So, these guys, it may seem like it's easy work in the seller's market we're in, but these guys work really hard. And so really the magic of creating these good relationships with brokers means that you're going to learn and you're going to master how to become a person that puts the broker's deal on autopilot. Make their life easy when they award you a deal and give you the opportunity to close on a deal, because if you learn how to do that, you're going to get a lot more looks and a lot more deals. And so that is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how to get more looks and do more deals. So what I want to do is introduce to you guys Mr. Chris Deuillet of CBRE in Dallas. Chris, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, JC and Paul. It's a real pleasure.
That's awesome. Well, all you buyers out there, all you listeners, I want to read a couple stats on Mr. Deuillet, because he's got a pretty impressive background. He is the senior vice president at CBRE in Dallas, and he has his team is actually the number one ranked team in terms of the DFW area. They did $1.8 billion in transactions in 2018. Let me repeat that. $1.8 billion in transactions in 2018. They are the largest brokerage shop in DFW. That is an incredibly large amount of volume that they pushed through last year. Chris has been in the business for 18 years, and he has personally transacted over $1.4 billion in lifetime transactions in the DFW market. So Chris is a very, very experienced broker with many, many years. And so he is absolutely a person that can give you a very, very good feel for what you need to be doing to put a deal on autopilot, which is really, really important if you want to be a good and consistent buyer that's going to do multiple deals over the long run. So Chris, really without any further ado, let's get right to it. These listeners want to know, what are the 5 things that people can do, actionable steps? We want to hear about actionable steps people can do to increase their chances of doing more deals with you.
Sure. And again, I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to speak on this. I would say the first idea to come to mind would be right when you begin the negotiations up front, even before contract negotiations, is the consideration for your letter of intent. So be proactive on contract negotiations, but that all starts when you first submit your letter of intent in writing. What I mean by that is we have a lot of offers that come in on a lot of deals, and what we see is the bulk of the offers offers of letter of intents are on one page. But if there are some key points that you want to make sure that are in your contract, and it could be very small minutia kind of stuff or very high level type of items, but those you should very much put into the letter of intent. So if sellers, reps, and warranties are important, or a particular title company that you have to have for some reason, or if there's something timely, we need for tax purposes or whatever to close, make sure you put that in the letter of intent, because that letter of intent really is a blueprint to start that contract. The other point I would like to address on this topic would be everybody obviously should use a lawyer, but make sure you're using a good lawyer. And what I mean by that is a lawyer that obviously covers all your bases and protects your interests, but is very much focused on seeing the contract be a win-win it fulfills everybody's needs, and it goes through the process and finally gets executed.
Yeah, I would tell you. Yeah, I would tell you that that's probably number one thing when it comes to finding an attorney, is that there's a lot of attorneys out there. There's title attorneys, there's estate planning attorneys, there's SEC attorneys, but the ones that you really want to find are really contracts attorneys, and you're looking for proactive contracts attorneys.
Yes.
You're looking for people that have done multiple transactions, whether it's a real estate, but specifically apartments. And that's exactly what you want to find and you may have to get a referral from the listing agent about who they would recommend, but you want to find an attorney that is a proactive attorney trying to make the deal, not trying to put a bunch of red lines across the contract itself, or even start you off on the wrong path about taking time. Time in these deals is of the essence. Lots of time kills deals. So find a good attorney. So that's great information, Chris.
And one other point I wanted to address on that was also this responsiveness. I think you touched on a little bit, Paul, was that, if you get a letter of intent agreed to, it's everybody that's involved in it from the buyer's side. If somebody's going on vacation, if there's a wedding, if, if it affects the time period, if the lawyer is going to be out of pocket for a while, the response time is very important. We've had deals where they get agreed to and signed off in a day, and we've had deals that have gone on for a month. And everybody, even going under contract, is already experiencing deal fatigue before even starting the process. So I would say that's another key point, is making sure that everybody's readily available to negotiate the contract.
Time kills deals. Time kills deals.
Time does kill deals. Chris, what would you say is the average time that you're going to want to see a deal from award to contract signature in this market that we're in? What's the time frame you'd say that you'd want to see happen here?
We usually budget about a week. So
exactly.
From a letter of intent executed, you've got a weekend in there, and who knows what else. But yeah, I mean, we usually, on our proposals for a seller, here's the timeline, Mr. Owner, Mr. Potential Client, from when we market the asset to close. We usually put in there about a week of, hey, that's when the contract's going to get negotiated.
Great. What's point number two?
Sure. Point number two is provide a list of the due diligence items ahead of contract execution. So when we're when we're going back and forth with the lawyers and the buyer and seller on a contract, go ahead and send us the due diligence list that you're needing. And it doesn't have to be a long list, or it can be, but what's more important is almost prioritizing, like, top 40 music songs. Number one is important and the most needed, and probably most immediately and timely needed. Because then for some reason, whatever that item is, it might be needed for the loan application. It might be needed for third parties. So ranking them is very much a key component of doing that. But having that due diligence and being proactive and putting the deal on autopilot, that's very important.
Chris, it's such a great point. I mean, if you think about it, typically with these contracts, you only have about 3 days between the time the contract is executed and the time that the DD items are due. And typically, as a seller, you may not necessarily be looking at the DD items during the contract negotiations because you've got so many other things happening. So getting that DD list out to the broker ahead of time as a buyer before the contract is even executed, while you're drafting these things, and then the broker could go follow up with the seller and say, hey, these are the really important DD items. That seller is going to go back ahead of time and he's going to start getting those things ready. And he's going to give himself a lot more than 3 days to make sure and get those DD items done. And at the end of the day, if he's got more time, that means he's going to be more complete, or he or she's going to be more complete with their DD items to the buyer. So it's such a great point, Chris. You got to get that list out ahead of time before the contract gets signed.
Because some of those items the seller may or may not even have, they might not even exist. And that's just, if we can cut that off at the pass and discuss it and work through it, it's not a problem. If it pops up later down the road, it becomes more of a problem.
Absolutely. So what do you got? What's number 3? These are great tips, Chris.
So number 3 is have your loan package ready to go. Usually when looking at a deal, what we usually do as brokers, but more importantly as a buyer, is go ahead and take that analysis that you've done and take it to your preferably a repeat loan broker or a mortgage broker and say, hey, we're looking at buying this. Can you size this loan? Because what's ideal is once we go under contract, making that loan application as soon as possible after the effective date is a very big, impressive move that the buyer can do for the seller. So that is, part of the having your ducks lined up in a row. That's sometimes overlooked a little bit. Yeah, I can get a loan. Don't worry about it. Let's move on. Well, if you look at the loan to value or the interest rates all of a sudden spike or drop, your loan proceeds might be different than they were a week ago. I think that's something to consider as you're putting your deal on autopilot.
Yeah, Chris. I mean, from personal experience, the loan is such a critical piece of the timeline, right? I mean, if you talk to a lot of brokers, you'll typically find out that the long pole in the tent and the reason why people aren't able to close on time, that is you buyers out there, is typically because the application hasn't been submitted in a timely fashion, or for some reason things have slowed up on the loan side, and that's usually the last piece that you need to fund and close a project. So really, if you are not submitting your loan package right away, you're already putting yourself behind the 8 ball, and you're definitely going to damage your relationship with the broker if that becomes a major reason why you can't close, and it really has no more to do with than the fact that you weren't really timely with that application and the processing that loan application. It's so important.
That if I can chime in here, we recently did a deal with MPG and UJC, and that was by far not even an issue because the loan application, everything else was, I think, submitted right upon the effective date, and that was very impressive. So that made everything smoothly. We closed on time, but I did want to mention that to you, that was a very much an experience on purchasing.
Well, we appreciate it, but we're no dummies. We work with Old Capital, so they executed pretty well for us, and we're grateful for that.
The seller wants to see that too, because when you do an application, not only do you sign the application to proceed with the transaction, but you also pay a deposit for earnest money or for the due diligence for the third parties. And so you may pay anywhere from $12,000 to $20,000. And that's a key indication for a seller that you're a pretty serious person, that you're willing to go forward and there's that you have money at risk.
And that, that's non-refundable. Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah, that's non-refundable. So don't forget about that.
Yeah.
Another great tip. Well, what do you got? You're on a roll here. What's number 4, Chris?
What I've experienced, this item number 4 is create a calendar of buyer activities to share with the broker / the seller. I've seen it very few times, but it's almost like a critical dates letter that a title company always issues out. So you can almost back into where should we be? Where are we? It's obviously a title company is going to have more concise dates, cutoffs and things like that. But a buyer proactively providing literally a calendar of, hey, here's when we're going to inspect the property. Here's when third parties are probably going to be. Here's my roofer that's going to go out there, my foundation guy, whatever. If they put that on a calendar in writing and provide that, boy, that goes a long way. Because I think a lot of buyers out there have in their head, here's my calendar of events, but but you never see it in writing. So what you should do is just resuscitate it, put it down on a calendar, and provide it to the other side. I think that would go a long way. It's very rare, but I think that's extremely impressive when it's done.
That's great.
Such a great point. Chris, when we were talking about this offline and you'd brought that point up, it's something that I hadn't even thought of myself. I mean, just like you said, we kind of as buyers assume that in our head, we've got the schedule out, and obviously we take it pretty seriously, but taking that extra step to communicate a calendar in writing and memorializing that with you is such a great way to make your life as a broker a lot easier. Now you've got a list of things that the buyer is going to work on, and you can proactively communicate with the seller to get things lined up. Like, for example, like you said, the inspections. Such a great point.
Yeah. It is a moving piece, and if the roofer can't get out there on the exact date, that's understandable. But at least there's a time frame, and staff can understand when they're going to be out there, et cetera. So it makes the whole process smoother. And let's use the word autopilot. It just makes it go on cruise control.
Yep. I love it. Well, I mean, we're wrapping it up here. Let's get down to number 5. Give us another great tip here.
Don't blindside with execution items.
Good one.
That's always a good one, but that's a simple way of saying, if there is a surprise, if there is, and I say this just from my years of experience, there will usually be an issue that comes up. There will be an issue that comes up. Is when an issue does come up, let's address it at that point. So whether it's from the contract negotiations or throughout the escrow process, if something does come up, bring it up then. A small issue discovered early is much better than a big issue discovered later. And I would stress that, because being on autopilot, that means everybody's heart rate pretty much stays the same throughout the whole transaction. And a surprise is okay and understandable, but something that's held back and used later as a bigger surprise, people's heart rates and blood pressures go up.
I would tell you that a senior broker like Chris is this. He's always flat. The newer brokers have these huge spikes that they're on fire, very volatile. But Chris is like this. So if you do bring something up, he understands, he thinks about it, and he's not fiery like, that's your fault, that's your problem. It's like, we're solving this as a team. Thanks for bringing that out. Let's see if we can solve it. So I think that's a great credit for Chris and all of his years of experience. He's not volatile. He's a problem solver. If you do come across a problem, he's there to help you to get this thing done.
I think that's another word for broker is problem solver. So that's
definitely.
And doing it so long as well as JC and Paul. I mean, almost all the issues that do come up, we've run into before, and usually there's a solution or answer to it.
Such a great list, Chris. I wouldn't even mind if you just maybe recap 1 through 5. Just give the recap here real quick.
So 1, be productive on the contract negotiations. Make sure you start early on what's important to you and what's not important. 2, provide a list of due diligence items ahead of contract execution. Being proactive on those items that we're going to need from the seller is always going to be paramount. Number 3, have your loan package ready to go. You can get your ducks lined up in a row before going under contract. That's going to be a very much a buy indicator for the seller. 4, create a calendar of buyer activities that's going to occur. Just like a title company, if you can set it all up in writing and provide to the seller, it's going to make it a lot easier for everybody. And then finally, don't blindside with any execution issues. So surprises will come up. We're all a team. Let's address them together and get over the hurdles and make it a transaction.
Well, Chris, such great tips, man. I really appreciate you coming online. Heck, you guys do a lot of deals out in Dallas, Fort Worth. I know because we've transacted with you. Why don't you tell the viewers out there how they can get a hold of your team if they've got some deals they want to talk to you about, or if they've got some deals they might want to buy from you? Sure.
Get a hold of me however you can. Let me provide my email address is my name, Chris.Deuillet. I'll spell that for you, DEUILLET @CBRE.com, or feel free to call me, 214-979-6538. I've grown up in Dallas and know the market inside and out, and would love to talk with you about buying or selling, or however we can help you. We're really here to provide a service.
Well, that is awesome, Chris. Well, again, we really appreciate it. Paulie, anything going on your side?
October 24th, 25th, Old Capitol Multifamily Conference at House of Blues. Our keynote speaker this year, you know him, you love him, Coach Lou Holtz. Coach Lou Holtz will give you the inside information about doing the right thing. Now, last year we had Roger Staubach talk a little bit about real estate and his career with the Cowboys. The year before, teammates with, and only we worked with teammates with Rob O'Neill. This year, do the right thing with Coach Lou Holtz. So look forward to seeing you. Go to the oldcapitalpodcast.com website and RSVP to get tickets to come to Texas. See you and 700 other people to network in Texas.
I'm excited about it, Paulie. I will be there, and I'm looking forward to it myself.
I will be there also.
Fantastic. And then JC, what's going on in your life?
Well, things are good. Multifamily Property Group is moving the needle here. And if anybody out there likes our style and would like to connect with us, and if we can help anybody, answer any questions, we are always here. You can go to our website at multifamilypropertygroup.com. Again, that's multifamilypropertygroup.com. Go to the contact us page and just request a free 15-minute consultation, which we are happy to do. We can set up, and you'll actually probably end up talking with me personally for 15 minutes. And if you've got any questions on multifamily, we would be happy to help you out. So, Chris, once again, thank you for joining. Paulie, stay cool out in Hawaii and have a good rest of your break. We are signing out. Thanks a lot for joining, guys. We'll talk to you soon.